Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to our random review. Today's random review comes from 1973, and it's The Rainbow Boys, starring Donald Pleasence, Kate Reid, and Don Calfa. This is a Canadian International Pictures release, Spy number 11, one of the Vinegar Syndrome partner labels that I have grown a liking to. As always, this comes with reversible cover and a nice little booklet. So this film was directed by Gerald Potterton, who mainly did animation. He was one of the directors on Heavy Metal, the cult animated film. He was actually an assistant on the animated version of Animal Farm. That was his first professional job, and it tells the story of Logan, played by Donald Pleasence, whose father has a gold mine somewhere in the mountains in British Columbia, and he comes across this character called Mazella, played by Don Calfa, who again is a face you'll recognise. If you don't recognise his name, he was in Return of the Living Dead and played lots of heavies in his career due to his face and his facial expressions. And Gladys, a woman he knows, played by Kate Reid, who you'll recognise from lots of things, including the Andromeda Strain. So it's kind of a ragtag shaggy dog story where the three of these fairly disparate characters, using Mazella's three-wheeled motorcycle, go on a road trip to find Logan's father's gold, and they bicker and they fall out, and they meet a few people along the way before they potentially reach the gold. This is a film that's about an hour and a half, which I think is just about the perfect length for it. I think if it was any longer, the characters might grate on you the same way that they grate on each other. But at 90 minutes, they are kind of endearing, and as I said, in a kind of rough around the edges type way. But the real star of the film is the Canadian countryside itself. The film, which has been restored, I mean, Donald Pleasence was quoted as being pretty disappointed with the results of the film. It never really got a wide release. But it is a beautiful film. He said it was one of the hardest shoots they ever worked on, and then for it not to get much release or not many people to actually see it, it was a bit of a shame. And he's right, I mean, the restoration is remarkable. It looks really beautiful, and the countryside of British Columbia looks absolutely gorgeous. There's moments of true comedy gold, if you'll pardon the pun. Pleasance plays a character who's, holds his father in very high esteem. His father fought in the war. He still has his First World War wraps that he wears at the bottom of his trousers. He has many anecdotes about stories of what his father did, and but you can actually play a drinking game for the Rainbow Boys. If you take a drink every time Donald Pleasence's character says "gee whiz," you'll probably be plastered by the end of the film. Gladys, played by Kate Reid, is far more sensible, the far more practical one out of the three. Logan is a complete dreamer who's living in the past. And of course, they all have their plans for how they're going to spend the money when they find all this gold. Mazzella is kind of in between both worlds. He's from New York and he's just out on the road. You can see him being a survivor of Easy Rider, essentially. But like most people that were part of the Summer of Love, or Love's Gonna Conquer All, and we can put flowers in the barrels of rifles, and that'll stop war. They became fairly material people eventually. So the idea of finding a literal pot of gold under the rainbow is very appealing to Mazzella, and he's gets kind of furious at various setbacks, including a fairly spectacular setback. This is not a film that is plot driven. This is a film that's all about the characters, and it takes its winding way through the countryside. There's a wonderful scene where they come across some native North Americans, and they just have a drink and get plastered, and Donald Pleasence tells more outlandish war stories from his father. It's just a beautiful scene. Again, doesn't move the plot on anywhere, but even though these characters can annoy the hell out of each other, you do want to actually spend the time with them, but just perhaps not for 2.5 hours. As I said, an hour and a half's absolutely perfect. So on widescreen, the Blu-ray restoration, as I said, is absolutely beautiful. There's 3 great performances by character actors who never really got the opportunity, pretty much by the way they look, of being like huge stars. Obviously Pleasence was probably the biggest star, if you like, but obviously this was before Dr. Loomis in Halloween. It's just a wonderful little scruffy shaggy dog story, and it's just beautifully played and beautifully written. Potterton wrote it as well, and as usual with Canadian International Pictures, the extras in this are pretty fabulous. There's a commentary with Gerard Potterton, producer Anthony Robineau, not Rainbow, and composer Howard Blake. There's an hour with Jerry from 2022, which is a 53-minute interview with director Gerard Potterton, which is pretty fantastic, because he talks about his war experiences in World War II as a child, being evacuated out to the countryside, and how his career got started, which is a fascinating 53 minutes that flies by. Then we have The Legend of Don Calfa from 2022, which is a 27-minute piece by author-filmmaker Gary Smart, reflects on the life and work of his friend Don Calfa. And then we see a couple of restoration pieces, The Rainbow Boys from VHS to Blu-ray from 2022, which is 4 minutes, and Restoring the Rainbow Boys from 2022, which is 3 minutes, and it just does give a wonderful window into the whole restoration process, and you consider what it was like on VHS. It is amazing that we get to see like a pristine print of it now. It's a re-release trailer, and there's an interesting 16 minutes from 1969 Pinter People animation, which Gerald Potterton animated 4 segments written by Harold Pinter, strangely enough, which are kind of oddly fascinating. And again, there's a booklet featuring reflections from editor Catherine Reynolds and an essay by Donald Pleasant's biographer Sam Besant on the actor's Canadian films. So once again, this is a sparkling release by CIP. This is CIP Spy number 11 for those counting at home. Great performances, but again, if you're into plot-driven films, this isn't one. This is just an absolute joy as three kind of misfits team up to go find gold. And as I said, there's genuinely 3 or 4 laugh out loud moments that are just beautifully pitched, beautifully performed. At one point, Donald Pleasance does have an accident with his trousers, and Mazzella ends up giving him like white flares with lots of little coloured stars on them, which is just comedy gold, as I say. So that's the Rainbow Boys from 1973. I would highly recommend checking it out, but maybe not for those that are obsessed with story and plot. This is, as I say, a beautiful, sunshine-drenched, golden, if you will, character piece. So thanks so much for watching. Please let me know if you've seen the Rainbow Boys and what you think of it, and hopefully join me again for more videos. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.